Hello, everybody. Good evening. How are you doing, Father?
Doing well, Alberto. How are you?
I'm doing great. I had been anxiously waiting for tonight. We have a lot to
This was
talk
a fun
about.
week.
Yes, even not including the questions that we're going to get in the chat. Because remember, tonight,
Mhm.
you all, the audience, you set the topics that you want us to talk about. So leave your questions in the chat. They can be about whatever. Maybe you didn't watch our last episode about the story of a soul live, and maybe you have some questions regarding that. Those questions are valid. Maybe you have any questions regarding anything else that's going on. Those questions are also valid. But Father, let's start it out with
Valid, but
what
are they licit?
they are valid and licit.
There you
Both.
go.
But I want to start tonight with what everybody's talking about. So everybody, or at least was talking about, because remember, Restless Heart Media is not about, oh, this dropped. Okay, let's go live. No, it's about we just have to wait. We have to wait until Friday. But what everybody was talking about this week, Father, was Cardinal Roach drops a letter to the cardinals at the consistory. And apparently, Cardinal Burke said that it was a very nice meeting, basically. But Cardinal Roach at the end, and the grifters had been telling us, because they have to generate the clicks and they have to generate the likes and the views to their articles and their views on YouTube that are with their nice monetized channels. Have to generate the clicks. They have to keep us on addicted. They were telling us that the liturgy it's going to be like a new Council of Nicaea. Saint Nicholas, Cardinal Burke is going to walk in. This is according to the grifters, and he's going to just tell everybody why the Latin Mass is going to be so nice, and then everybody's just going to have a vote. And that's basically what they were telling us, that, oh, Pope Leo, like, finally, Father, he got the cardinals together, and there has been no changes to Traditiones Custodes because Pope Leo was waiting for this moment to drop the shoe and then be like, okay, now the Latin, whatever fantasy the professional Catholics were telling us or trying to sell us on. But then the reality was that the liturgy was not discussed at all. And at the end of the consistory, and the consistory is a meeting of all of the cardinals. Now, after Vatican II, it's basically cardinals from all over the world. And at the end of the consistory, the meeting ends. Nobody talked about the liturgy. Our brave, or so we are told by the Institute fans, Cardinal Burke, apparently never even, whatever. And so Cardinal Roach hands out a letter to all of the attenders at the consistory. And then people get the letter. It's a 2-page letter. It's difficult, Father, in ecclesiastical matters. It's difficult to say much in 2 pages. People get it. It's
Yeah.
double-sided, basically one paper, just mentioning a bunch of fallacies about the traditional Latin Mass. And then the Cardinal Burke never didn't go live with Michael Matt or anything like that to tell us that this had happened. This is shocking development, because let's remember, Cardinal Burke, Father, Cardinal Burke has nothing against the governance of the church, his church, the conciliar church, under Dr. Prevost. So the women leading dicasteries, no problem. He has no problem with that. Let's remember that. Because, of course, Father, as we know, in the traditional movement, there are many bishopesses.
There are.
We don't
Yes, we
have
spoke about that on our
deaconesses.
other show.
Yes, with the show over with Father Lefort and Bishop Mikkel, also available on Restless Heart Media. There are bishopesses in the traditional movement. So maybe why is there a problem with archbishopesses? Because this is at the end of the day what they are, Father. Bishops are, so members of the curia are archbishops because they have authority over bishops. So we make fun in the conciliar church. We make fun of the Anglicans for having female archbishopesses, but in the Catholic, or so we are told, Catholic world, we have female archbishops, and they are members of the curia. They lead dicasteries. I don't remember the names, but they lead dicasteries. They have authority over bishops. So we have de facto female archbishops. Father, what do you say to people that say, "Oh, but they're not ordained"? What do we say to that?
They still carry the jurisdiction. So there's jurisdiction, there's holy orders, and one of the things that the church has always struggled with was the separation of jurisdiction and holy orders. So like even in the rite itself of a priest being ordained, so he has his chasuble pinned in the back, like upwards, kind of folded, so to speak. And there's a part in the ritual in the ordination of a priest where the assistant priest goes and unpins the chasuble, signifying the reception of jurisdiction. And so that's one of the things, again, that's questionable in the Sede movement and the Recognize Resist, where things are supposedly illicit. That, I mean, the granting of jurisdiction is built into the rite itself. So do these people receive jurisdiction or not? But nevertheless, yeah, this when it comes, you began your monologue here tonight talking about the grifters and talking about what they're constantly trying to convince us of, that we're going to get our Latin Mass back. But if you pay close attention to all of their arguments when they try to demonstrate that we are going to get the Latin Mass back, the only premises that they have to work off is their own interpretation of events, their own interpretation of this letter, their own interpretation of what Pope Leo said, their own interpretation of what else is going on. That's how weak their premises are. But they're shooting at people, giving people this massive false hope, but they have nothing concrete that has no shadow of a doubt, nothing evident on which to base their argument. There's no evidence. There's just their own interpretation. And of course, they're lay people. How much do they understand about ecclesiastical politics? I remember there was a certain grifter that pretended that he had insider information whenever the Pachamama was thrown into the Tiber. He pretended that he had access to inside information. But what actually turned out that he actually paid and organized the whole thing, but so that it could give people the impression that he was well connected and understood ecclesiastical politics. And so that's the issue, is that the only evidence they have is their own biased interpretation of events. And of course, they're gearing their interpretation precisely to support their conclusion. So they're arguing the conclusion. So, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. We are having the questions are coming in. Thank you for those questions. We will eventually get to them. I do want to remind everybody about our Tuesday night live series on the story of a soul by St. Teresa of Lisieux. This book right here. We are going through it basically page by page, but not just reading off of it, but commentating. And Father, this series, we started with Introduction to the Devout Life because we were sitting in my living room and then just having discussions about this or that. And then we said, why don't we just turn the camera on and then put this into YouTube? And it fit in within what your vision for Restless Heart Media was, which is and was and still is, to provide spiritual content that actually nourishes people, that has nothing to do with current events or anything like that. So Tuesday nights, join us if you're new to Restless Heart Media. We are going through the story of a soul by St. Teresa of Lisieux. And I had been mentioning for multiple episodes that I have a little book that's now apparently sold for almost $60 used over on Amazon.
Check that out. What's that book called?
It's The Father of the Little Flower. It's this little book right here. I looked it up, Father, and I bought this book. It's it was almost like new, but then through our moves and then boxes.
Oh my goodness. It is $60.
Yes. It's this little book right here. Through our moves and whatnot, it got a little banged up. Right here, but it's still pretty much almost like new. My copy here, I bought it for $7. Almost 5 years ago.
Well, you know what you have to do, Alberto? You
have
to bootleg it. Put a PDF out on the internet so we can all read it.
I'm going to gatekeep it. I'm going to be like grifters. I'm just going to gatekeep it. This little book, there's like one copy out on the internet being sold for $60. It's worth it. If you have $60 right now, I would recommend that you go get it. And they also have an interesting passage that I sent you a picture of in the morning, Father, where gives us a little bit of the insight into Louis Martin, because we think that there's a silver bullet. So we think, okay, so this man right here, the father of Saint Therese, we believe that he had a silver bullet that you just do something, and then his daughters, all his daughters, became religious. That's what and we want that not for the glory of God, Father, but so that everybody else in our parish can see that we are very Catholic. Just for
Alberto, you should really sell that book. There's a new copy that's $354. You can make bank.
I'm just gatekeeping it. I just gatekeep this little book. Look at this. It's $300. Unbelievable. And I bought it for $7. I looked up on my emails back when I bought it. And so anyway, so maybe people back then, maybe Father, we are just driving up the price of this little book, talking about it here on Restless Heart Media. I'm not going to sell it, so I'm not. This is not like insider trading. All right. So I'm not. This book is not going to. It's going to stay in my house. But anyway, maybe next time it's $500, and maybe I'll just copy all the pictures and then sell it. I'm not going to pirate the book on like other Catholic content creators, Father, that actually all their stuff in their channels is pirated. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, getting a little bit of a glimpse into Louis Martin, Father, there's an excerpt in this book written by Celine Martin, Saint Therese's older sister, that she was very close especially after the death of her mother. They were together very often. So anyway, so in this little passage that I sent you the picture of, Father, it details about how when he was sick, very ill in his later days, his Monsieur Guerin, who was the brother of his wife, deceased wife at the time, they said, "Oh, we're going to go pray that you get better." And then he said, "No, don't pray that I get better. Just pray that the will of God may be done." So a very holy person. But then again, talking about the silver bullet, Father, we want to have a silver bullet. We just do this one thing and this is going to happen. But we find out with people, and when we have people that may be close to us that have fostered vocations in their homes, there's no silver bullet. It's just wanting to follow the will of God. That's silver bullet, but that entails so much more than just one little thing that we can do that is going to give us results. So I'm just going to gatekeep this little book right here. Gate kept the grifter style, or
we should put it behind a paywall. We have to, subscribe for $17 a month just to read a page.
Amy says, "I try a bit books or thrift books." Yes, I bought it for $7 from thrift books. That's where I got it from 5 years ago. Anyway, all right, let's see. Let's start getting into the questions, and then once we run out of questions again, Father, we'll pick up on our next topic that has something to do with the archbishopesses. Okay. Anyway, so Chris Chattinger says, "Thank you so much for the question." He says, "Alberto, could you elaborate on the superiority of the SCG? SCG, See of Caer-Glow." I like how it's just now becoming an acronym. Like everybody knows what it means. See of Caer-Glow model to the decrepit SSPX model, Society of St. Pius X. Or perhaps I should say the Society of Bishop Felipe model. Head tip, Father Martin. So what is the SSPX model? Now, I do want to preface this by saying that I don't mean this as an attack on Archbishop Lefebvre, because and Sedevacantists do this a lot, Father. They will go back now like 60 years after everything happened, and then they will say, "Oh, Archbishop Lefebvre this, Archbishop Lefebvre that. He made an error in this, he made an error in that." Of course, it's very easy to see everything clearly decades later, 40 years after the 80s. Father, we are 40 years after the consecrations. It's very easy to look back and then say, "Oh, he did this and he was a modernist this or that way," now that we have all of the information. And you've maybe in private conversations, Father, you've talked about the disposition of people who have a memory of what the church was like prior to Vatican II. And perhaps for us, the younger crowd, we didn't grow up. We grew up seeing all the cringe,
Hmm.
but that was not always that was not always the case. There was such a thing as people who lived before Vatican II, and then they were able to see the changes. And so you've sort of have, correct me if I'm wrong, but advocated toward having a less judgmental outlook on people that knew what the situation was like, that are traditionalists, or that, that are, that not modernists, but that are tradition minded on what their specific outlook is, especially nowadays. Anyway, but the SSPX model is that they have now two auxiliary bishops, but sometimes they're auxiliary, and then sometimes they have jurisdiction if they need to marry somebody, or they need to have a marriage tribunal or something.
Or they need to laicize a priest or something like that.
Father, do you need jurisdiction to lace as a priest?
Well, you definitely have to hold an office and have the authority to declare him no longer in the ministerial priesthood. So that's one of the interesting things, is that sometimes they treat them, Rome treats them as if they have jurisdiction, as if they have an actual organization. The organization is recognized under canon law, and then other times they don't. So that's why it's when we talk about partial communion, all that kind of stuff, it's because Rome is treating them talking about them out of both sides of their mouth. Things seem to be intentionally ambiguous, and par for the course for Vatican II, ambiguity. And whenever it's convenient to say they're not in communion with Rome, bishops say they're not in communion with Rome. Whenever it is convenient, they do. So, I mean, obviously, Rome is not, absolute certainty is not important enough for Rome these days.
So a few days ago, and this is I was going to get into this topic a little bit later, but it's sort of relevant because, and why are we spending so much time in one question? Because, Father, there are just so many things that come into this question, perhaps even more. I mean, we have videos on Restless Heart Media discussing the seal of Caer-Glow and things like that. But before I go into where I was going, Father, you were very adamant, and I think that it was almost prophetic. But before your ordination, you had many commentators, right, telling you, "Oh, you should do this, or you should do that, or you should have done this, or you should have done that." But your or part of your the Catholicism, in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic faith belief, we need bishops. This is not it's not a religion of laity like Protestantism, and it's not a religion of just priests, vagus priests running around offering the sacraments, not being under any authority. You saw it very correctly, and then and you diagnosed Catholic faith needs bishops. You can't just be running around administering the sacraments without an authority. It's a system of authority, and that authority comes from Almighty God. Anyway, so the SSPX model is just basically just having auxiliary bishops. And
So,
what is the yes, go ahead.
yeah, just to add on to that too, because the SSPX and their structure, they're structured as a society of apostolic life, which is of pontifical right. So they were born as a mere public association of the faithful in some diocese of Switzerland. That's when they got suppressed by Rome. Archbishop Lefebvre talks about it in Open Letter to Confused Catholics. They got suppressed, and so they only existed there. They only had the right to exist in that diocese. And of course, they took it upon themselves to extend themselves to the entire world, using the crisis as justification to do more than what they were initially allowed by Rome to do, which is important because they took it upon themselves to do this. And obviously, I agree with doing that. But of course, people will come back and use that argument against Caer-Glow and all that kind of stuff. So they took it upon themselves. But the way they're organizing themselves right now, their superior general is a priest, obviously. But that priest, the whole society, has to be subordinate to some sort of ecclesiastical authority that is a bishop. Either if it's of pontifical right, it's the Bishop of Rome. So like the FSSP is of pontifical right, they're directly under the Bishop of Rome. And the SSPX doesn't have this structure. They're pretending to have this structure of pontifical right without being a pontifical right, without ever having been a pontifical right. Without ever having been a pontifical right. There are communities that are basically just as big as the SSPX that are only of diocesan right. So they're still underneath a bishop. And so they're pretending to be, in a sense, something that they're not, assuming to be something that they're not. And essentially these priests are just under priests. They're doing their own thing. That's when Rome comes in and asks Bishop Fillet to lay aside as a priest, all that kind of stuff, because they know that this is what bishops are supposed to do, not priests. And so you have an auxiliary bishop stepping in these cases. But also, I mean, the SSPX model. Yeah. Well, I mean, there are so many cases that, I mean, also, I don't want to detract from SSPX. Like, I tell people to go there if that's what they have access to. So this isn't so much about bashing them. It's personally, I mean, they have obviously many good priests, but it's in terms of model and ecclesiology, and that we can't sacrifice ecclesiology to keep the truth, because also too, the reality is every position is going to have an error in it, only because this crisis is not supposed to exist. It's not supposed to exist. So if you're in communion with Rome, the FSSP, you have to be subordinate to a heretic. That's not supposed to exist. If you're, recognize and resist and disobedient to supposedly legitimate authority, that's not supposed to exist. If you're a sedative conscience and have no jurisdiction or claims jurisdiction, that's not supposed to exist. I mean, the reality is that's why, in one sense, the model of the Seer of Caer-Glow is that we literally work with anybody and everybody that wants to really just provide the sacraments and keep the faith, is because we know that every single position has a problem with it. Theologically, it has a problem with it. Ecclesiologically, it has a problem with it. And so what we need to do is simply survive the crisis. Like when a boat is in a storm, you're not, in a sense, worried about. Sometimes you have to throw things overboard, so to speak, just to survive. So when we're in this crisis, that's what it's about. It's about survival. It's about obviously getting to heaven. Into heaven, we need to act charitably towards one another, not make rash judgments, all that kind of stuff. So many other bishops from other groups make rash judgments, even about us. So yeah, Alberto, I'll let you head over to the Caer-Glow model. What were we going to say?
Yes. So so the Sea of Caer-Glow model is more of an early church model, really, now, or so it seems to be, after several decades. Now, a few days ago, we celebrated the feast of Saint Hilary of Poitiers, he was a layman, married, and then because the bishop was an Arian, the people went to him and then they said, "We want you to be our bishop." He was not a clergy. He was a well-known layman who was married, and so then they made him the bishop. He somehow found a way to secure an excommunication for the sitting bishop, and then he became the bishop. I don't know why, Father. We hear very often, "Oh, Saint Athanasius and Athanasius this and Athanasius that," but I was speaking with some friends in real life, and I said, so in the early church, Catholics said, "Yeah, we this doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense that your bishop is not Catholic." Mm-hmm. Also, again, with the topic of the dust not settling yet, the dust hadn't settled, but they seemed to have, Father, during the Arian crisis, a clearer view of the crisis that was ongoing than we have now. Mm-hmm. Because now we have this dilemma of, oh, can we be under? No, your bishop. If your bishop is not Catholic, then you're not Catholic. You're no different than an Anglican.
It's true. I mean, look at what Detroit, Knoxville, and most especially Charlotte. If their bishop is a homo heretic, all that kind of stuff, it's just you disobey him in certain things, you ignore him in certain things, but ultimately you go to his priest, to his diocesan functions, all that kind of stuff, and you just go along to get along, sort of thing. Whereas, yeah, in the diocese in which Saint Hilary was that they elected a new bishop, pure and simple, because the bishop was an Arian, just a heretic regarding the Trinity.
So why? So just to answer the question, so that we can move on to the following question, because this is still a topic that we'll talk about once we get through the questions that we currently have. Because it's more of I see it more as we're having the proper understanding that we are just like in the early church right now. Most of the sees, no, actually it's worse. It's worse than in the early church. every single see is occupied by a modernist. And so more on that a little bit later, because we do have a topic that we said that we are going to talk about, Father, before the during this show. But
You sent me a screenshot of Eric Ibarra.
yes,
Eric Ibarra being someone who's pretty prolific on Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism and the Filioque, and he's studied extensively the councils, the early church, what the early church taught to get to the bottom line of, the heretics of the heresies of Eastern Orthodoxy, and he's an apologist, particularly interested in the early church and against Eastern Orthodoxy. And he even what would he say? It's like, never before was there ever a crisis such as this. I mean, point to one. So here's a guy who's looked through all of history to find a crisis as bad as this one, and he says there isn't one. Not even the Arian crisis was as bad as the one that we're in today. But of course, again, we're more amenable to what's listed, what's approved by the church, and all that kind of stuff, without prioritizing what our Lord established the church to do. The church has a mission to provide the faith and the sacraments. And so if the church isn't doing that, if the church has kind of abandoned ship, so to speak, abandoned its mission, I mean, how to call those that are actually doing the mission, providing the faith and the sacraments, evil or schismatic or whatever else, it makes no sense.
and here's an example, Father. Decrepit SSPX model. I cringe. Just I'm going to say this, but it's so cringe. The SSPX organized a singles retreat, co-ed, over in Santos Ranch or whatever they call it now, and they said SSPX members only, or attenders of SSPX chapels only. Meanwhile, we are here talking about the Procedamus Gala taking place next month in Clearwater Beach, Florida, and Father Martin is calling out anybody who wants to keep the faith, come support us, and we'll figure out how we can support you.
Not only that, but there was people online that had access to Father Purdy, and he was saying that there weren't enough guys showing up because they intentionally also wanted to, if you sign up for the retreat, you had to say what SSPX chapel you went to so that they can actually contact your pastor there and see if you were like a normal human being. They didn't have enough guys. So imagine having this widespread network of SSPX parishes. How many guys go to SSPX in the United States? Okay, how many young single men go to the SSPX in the United States? And to not even within that group of single young men have enough for a singles retreat, and the ones that do sign up, you have to turn away. I mean, what does that say about the ministry of the SSPX, so to speak? That they can't even form young single men to be marriageable. That's pretty shocking.
So again, more on this question a little bit later. So Amy says, "Oh yes, a Novus Ordo Latin Mass. Where do I sign up?" So, Father, imagine we're in early church. People go to St. Hilary and then say, "We want you to be our bishop." He was not even an ordained priest. He had no orders whatsoever. He was not a deacon, nothing. "We want you to be our bishop." Catholics in Charlotte are going to pray so that their bishop can allow them to practice their religion. Pathetic. So imagine St. Hilary would have been like, "Oh, why don't you just go pray outside of the chancery?" That he may be converted and become a Catholic. Anyway, a little bit more on this.
Well, it's a good thing St. Hilary didn't have the temptation of becoming a podcaster, because maybe he just would have become a podcaster instead of becoming.
More on that later, Father. Gavin says, "Can you explain the importance of using Marie in baby names?" This is a very specific question. What do you think, Father?
I don't know. Well, I mean, in Hispanic culture, you always name your first daughter, your firstborn daughter, some sort of after Our Lady. I think my mom was the firstborn daughter, and her name's Maria. I don't know. I mean, having Our Lady's name and somehow involve your daughter, I don't know why you wouldn't. Especially, to be honest, especially with the way women are, naming her after the most pure Blessed Mother, gives her that ideal to live up to. Because, and this is something that's weird when a lot of fathers, a lot of parents, even mothers that I've discovered, is that like, okay, their daughter turns 14, 15, and somehow the parents don't believe that she could ever commit a mortal sin. Like, to me, that's bizarre, but they're like hypnotized or something. They truly don't believe their 14, 15-year-old daughter can commit a mortal sin. It's like, what? So I don't know, giving her a solid ideal in her name of living up to the purity of our Blessed Mother is definitely definitely a plus, definitely helpful, should be.
I saw a video that Cardinal Dolan posted recently where he has a ghost crucifix in the back, which is pretty funny. And he's like, well, people no longer name their children after saints, and it would usually be a patron or a patroness, an ideal to live up to. So it reminded me of what Cardinal Dolan said. Let's see. Christine asks, a woman making her confirmation, can she have a male sponsor or must it be a female sponsor? Father?
Yeah, female. And in the 1917 code is different than the 83 code. I don't know what's in the 83 code, to be honest, because see if Caer-Glow uses the 1917. And I know things changed, particularly about confirmation, because in the 1917 code, you cannot have your baptismal godparents be your confirmation sponsor. That was forbidden. But in the 1983 code, that's actually encouraged to use the same godparents for your confirmation sponsor. So at least in the 17 code, it had to be of the same sex as the confirmandi. So I think actually, I'm not sure. I think it's probably relaxed in the 83 code, because usually there was in the 17 code there was spiritual affinity to where the priest baptizing somebody, presumably an adult, the priest could never actually even marry that person. So even if they left the priesthood, got laicized, they still couldn't even marry somebody that they actually baptized, because there's spiritual affinity there. So they still consider that that person the spiritual son or daughter of the priest, even though the priest is laicized, which is pretty interesting. But in the 83 code, they relaxed a lot of things. So I don't know what it is in the 83 code, but in the 17 code, it's no.
Gavin asks, can a woman drink blessed water during childbirth, and can blessed water be given to the sick to drink during illness for healing? Thank you. I would assume holy water. I don't see why not to either.
Yeah. I mean, people put holy water and blessed salt in their food all the time. Yeah.
Amy says, all the good classic books are super money sign expensive. Yes.
Well, Alberto's going to start writing some super good classic books, and so hopefully they won't be as expensive.
Remove this question before the grifters come in because of the money signs. I agree with what that said. I've been practicing that every day. God's will be done. Yeah, absolutely. And then Amy just ordered a book. Very nice. Let's see. Justin Widely asks, why do you think so few clergy speak about the JQ? One of the more important issues of our time. It seems most have been Judaized. Well, I would think in the Novus Ordo context, because they don't believe that. They don't believe that, the issues around the JQ. And also, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want that preached about every week, like the Sedevacantists preaching about the SSPX, against the SSPX every week. I wouldn't necessarily want that, but I mean, I don't know. In tradition, it's pretty evident from the Holy Week ceremonies. So, it's just very clear. So I don't know. What do you think, Father?
I mean, a sermon is unique in the sense that there are some people who like to aim for their congregation's intellects, to give them new information. But that's more of a lecture. For me, when I'm preaching, giving a sermon, I aim for the will. I want to move my congregation to want to change something about their life. I want them to live their life in a different way than they had been before hearing the sermon. I don't aim for their intellect. I aim for their will. So if I need the JQ to be a premise, my ultimate goal of moving someone's will, I'll bring it up, fine. But my purpose there in an actual sermon during Mass is not to tell people what opinions or positions to take regarding politics. That's eating dinner with people. Yeah, sure, I'll tell them. Sitting in the hall after Mass. Yeah, I have no problem saying it. Obviously, through the internet and media, there's censorships and all that kind of stuff. Joey, no. I had to discipline my subordinates. Anyway, my very disobedient subordinates. But yeah, so there's no real platform or reason or scenario or circumstance to really truly address it unless you create it yourself, like you create an actual podcast episode in which you want to address it. There are a lot of commentators out there themselves giving evidence to it, but part of the problem with lay political influencers is that, I mean, look at the whole conservative movement right now. You just had Ashley St. Clair apostatize, like talk about transitioning her 1-year-old son that she had with Elon Musk, and all being like pro-trans now. You had all the female influencers this past summer come out with a provocative, immodest calendar that supposedly conservative men would want and that their conservative wives would want their husbands to have. Like, that's absolutely bizarre. And of course, you have conservative female politicians dressing up in MAGA swimsuits that show their behind. You have 2 conservative congresswomen getting divorces and one of their sons getting someone pregnant out of wedlock and her becoming a 40-year-old grandmother. You have all this bizarre things going, and then of course the whole Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, TPUSA, Daily Wire, all at each other's throats. So the whole political landscape thing is absolutely very bizarre. The JQ is really, I mean, it's obviously a point of division, but there's no real platform about which to speak. I think Father Mosley is the one that's most outspoken about it. And then, I mean, okay, so what effect has he had? Like, there's no real effect coming from it. The only real effect is what we actually do in our daily lives to counteract this. It's not just about it being a subject of conversation at the dinner table where we all feel like we're being productive because we're talking about it. We all agree, and then we actually don't do anything in our lives to change anything. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Is like politics is just something to talk about, to shoot the breeze, and no one really changes how they live. I don't know, what do you think about, Joe?
No, yeah, I agree. So there was some, because we haven't had a Friday Night Live, I think, all year, right? I think that our last one was the second. Oh, and I said that I was talking a little bit more about the wedding last weekend. But anyway, so really, it's interesting, because I would say if there's one positive aspect of the grifter landscape, is that usually most people that go to a Latin mass, just because of how things end up being, are listening, or are sort of at least paying attention to politics and things like that, or to the grifters and learning things. So I mean, they do have some good stuff about learning about the faith. But then the Novus Ordo crowd is very different. So maybe where that could be relevant could be with the Novus Ordo crowd, but you would assume that people that go to a Latin mass know what St. Paul had to say about them. And so there's really not as much of a, like, you don't necessarily, as you mentioned, Father, you don't want to say to your congregation things that they already know. And it's not that you don't want to talk about it, it's that we're focused about spiritual matters. So I don't know. And then I did learn a lot that I ended up agreeing with when John Senior's The Restoration of Christian Culture, because his prescription to restore the Christian culture, which was something that I sort of was already thinking about, but I hadn't been able to put words to it. But it's very simple: restoring religion, really restoring religious life. That makes sense, and that explains why there's nothing that we can do in the political landscape that will change anything. But then again, the restoration of religious life starts in the home.
Exactly.
So yeah, so the JQ usually comes up during Holy Week, because we are very much paying attention into the Passion of our Lord. But yeah, so it's an interesting topic. In the Novus Ordo world, we know that the clergy don't really believe what the church always said about that topic. And it's funny, Father, because I was taking our eldest over to her chess lessons earlier today. And then she was like, she asked me, "Oh, Dad, are my chess tutors Catholic?" And I said, "I don't know." She's like, "Okay, I'm going to ask them because I can't have J tutors." And I said, "No, that's true." And so she asked them. She said, "I had a question that I'd been wanting to." She talks like a little old lady. "I had a question that I'd been meaning to ask you for a while." People say that. "Are you Catholic?" And then they said yes. And she was like, "Okay." so see, whenever and she really picked up the topic because of us reading the Passion of our Blessed Lord. See, just when you teach the truth unadulterated, just these things just sort of are learned by the children. Let's see. Chris Chattinger says, "Thank you for the in-depth answer." And then let's see, Amy has a follow-up question. Amy's question is, Christine says, "Thank you, Father." And then Amy asks, "What should I do?" Is a question for your father. "What should I do if my daughter's confirmation sponsor, my cousin, a female, is now a practicing gay woman, possibly influencing my adult daughter?"
I mean, your daughter is an adult, so there's not really much you can do. If your daughter wants to be around her confirmation sponsor, she's going to be around her confirmation sponsor. There's not really much you can do except argue her points, consistently try to be around your daughter to be a greater influence than her sponsor. But to be honest, the sponsor's duties obviously is to know about, be concerned about your daughter's upbringing. Obviously, your daughter's now an adult, but obviously, her having been her confirmation sponsor, she should have influence throughout the rest of her life if she's living a good life, right? So, yeah, that's a difficult spot, and unfortunately there's not really much you can do except being influenced to your
Yeah,
daughter.
I agree. Gavin says, "Thank you for answering my questions. Looking forward to hearing you expound on the comparison of the Arian heresy and the current crisis in the church." And Amy says, "Brother Chewy, go to your cell. Dog penance." Chewy lives a very nice life.
He's spoiled.
Diane, hey, very, very nice to have you in the chat, Diane. She asks, "Good evening, all. Father, is there a way to print the article about the reminiscences without the formatting? I'd like to print it, but it's coming up is 28 pages."
So if you go to our website, oblatesofstaugustine.org, there's a contact page. Send me a contact asking for it because I have it on PDF. I'm just not gonna put it out there. So if you contact me through the contact page, it'll go to my email. I'll email you back the PDF and you can print it. It's only it's 15 pages in PDF, but no, it's really super good. So I've actually been sending it to some of my parishioners, all that kind of stuff, because it's super helpful. So just contact me through the Oblates of St. Augustine .org contact page, and I'll send you the PDF.
There we go. Great. And then Diane says, "Maybe you will be writing a book. Who knows?"
God willing, I will never write a book.
Then Amy says, "Amen. Thank you." All right. So speaking about Bishop podcasters, so we have Saint Hilary. The people go to him and then they say, "Oh, can you be our bishop?" And so then, Father, then people say, "I brought up this point in a group chat with my in real life friends," and I said, what's the only difference between now and then? If we believe our Catholic and Apostolic faith, Father, the only difference is that through Christendom, through the Renaissance, through modernity and everything, there's been an institution that has developed. But so after my sister's wedding, one of my relatives asked me, "Well, but why would you stick to the Latin Mass if now like the authority is saying that you should accept the new Mass?" And I said, "Well, here's the problem. The problem is that our Blessed Lord Jesus Christ established the church to protect and to pass on the faith. So the institution exists for the faith, not the other way around. Modernists and those who are even trats, Father, that say, oh, you're disobedient or whatever, they believe that the institution exists for the sake of the institution."
Right.
not for the sake of the faith, or that the faith exists for the institution. And again, and a lot of times these people are conservatives, and we actually agree on a lot of things, but they believe that the institution exists to make people based, not to save their souls. It's all the same thing.
It's funny. The faith is malleable. The faith is changeable, but not the hierarchical institution, which is what these conservatives think. But that's exactly what synodality is changing, is the hierarchical structure of the church. Even that. So they've changed the faith. They changed the hierarchical structure of the church. It's literally, it's no longer the faith nor the structure. It's no longer the faith nor the same institution. And that's what but as long as they allow, this is interesting. And if you're a modernist, you'd probably see this. As long as you allow the Latin Mass with the FSSP or the Institute, all that kind of stuff, Ecclesiae communities, you'll still keep some trads and maybe win a couple of them over to the new faith and the new hierarchical structure. But for some reason, people just can't break away from this ancient, just because there's some sort of continuity, and because they've kept the buildings. There's no continuity in faith or structure, but they're deceived because of the ownership of property.
So I lost my train of thought. But anyway, yes. So Saint Hilary understood this. Of course, yes, we have a bishop, but this is not the faith that they're preaching. It's actually corrupted and heretical, just like modernism. And we have St. Pius X to thank for the definition. If St. Hilary, Father, was a modern day institute, I was going to say FSSP, but I don't want to offend our FSSP attenders. Institute attender, he would have said, just go pray that the bishop may convert.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem becomes the following. So in St. Hilary's time, we'll go to him to become a bishop. Of course, somebody has to consecrate him. And he needed to get rid of the existing bishop in the see. Well, he's able to secure, there's a couple of bishops that were still Orthodox that are able to help out. Well, nowadays, Father, the modernists say, hey, Dr. Prevost, because it was him, they say, hey, give us the keys to the chancery. Okay. Here you go. And then bishops just become podcasters.
Exactly.
Telling all about how to be brave. But what moral authority does a bishop that just gives up, and we all know who this is, who just gives up the keys to the chancery, what moral authority does he have to now tell us to go risk our jobs, or your jobs, to go risk your jobs to proclaim Christ boldly or whatever? None. Zero moral authority. So then we have bishops who give up the keys to the chancery, leave, receive, very likely still receive their pension, keep all their benefits. So if there was a sort of a movement to restore the episcopacy, even within the conciliar church, there's absolutely nobody within the structure of the church to help lead that movement, because it's easier to just become a podcaster than to suffer greatly.
In between that bishop and the Coalition for Canceled Priests, all these other priests that have been canceled, one thing that's really struck me really hard this past week was how they're monetizing victimhood. In other words, they're not running parishes. They're not, administering the sacraments of the dying and going out to hospitals. They're not, in a sense, making converts. They're not doing anything other than just, with the podcast microphone. Like for me, like I had 6 calls today. I had a meeting with my organist we're already plotting Holy Week. We're already talking about Holy Week and getting everything ready. I'm in charge of a parish. I have a parish ministry. I have 2 masses every Sunday and daily mass during the week, open to everybody to come. But a lot of these canceled bishops, they don't have any of that. They just podcast. Me, I have this podcast because my people are poor and we need some way to get the word out so that we can continue this ministry. Because even like I was supposed to go to a conference tomorrow. Like I got invited to a conference tomorrow, and it was a private conference. If you see people like talking about flying to Tampa, whatever, it's because they're speaking at this private conference, over on Twitter, talking about flying to Tampa. It's because they're speaking at the private conference. I got invited to go. I got accepted to go. But then the person who was in charge of the guest list asked the person that contacted me to disinvite me. And all I can say was, like, this is so incredibly bizarre, because when COVID happened down here in Tampa, Diocese of St. Petersburg didn't allow any of the priests to go out to the hospitals and anoint people. Now, of course, the one traditional Latin Mass priest here, diocesan, that was our friend who came to our clergy dinners and all that kind of stuff. A very good friend of ours. Of course, underground, he still went, because obviously he couldn't, but he couldn't offer Mass publicly. But see, of Caer-Glow, we continue to offer Mass. And so what's crazy about these trads is they even treat us like we're garbage. Those of us who would actually administer the sacraments to them when their own bishops wouldn't administer the sacraments to them. So it's this canceled priesthood sort of thing where they don't administer sacraments, but they ask for your support. Support for what? To just sit in your room and do nothing until you podcast? But for us, we should have daily ministry, and we're asking you to support because our parish is poor, and so we don't get the billionaire benefactors. This is hence why Procedamus trying to get people to support us, all that kind of stuff, for actual parish ministry. Like we're open. As Bishop Meagle was like, if the liquor stores are open, we're going to stay open, because they didn't close the liquor stores during COVID. So, I mean, that's what we're asking for. We're just asking to survive. We're not asking to build an Immaculata. We're asking to survive so that we can save souls. And we're the ones that get, cast out. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, bishops and other priests who simply said, maybe you can't vote Democrat if you're Catholic, or boys are boys and girls are girls, and they can't switch, and they get canceled, and then they make money off of just that. I mean, come on.
We have over 100 logged in. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. We're very happy that y'all are joining us in the chat. That at the end of the day, the SSPX model is we are the only solution to the crisis in the church. And until we solve the crisis in the church, it will continue. And so you either come to us, or it's even bad to go to the FSSP or to go to the Institute. So you either come to us or you're in schism. See, of Caer-Glow model is having an understanding that the institution exists for the promotion of the faith, not the other way around. And I'm not saying that the SSPX doesn't also believe that the faith. Of course, I'm sure they believe that the faith is the most important. It's what matters. But the approach is still the same view, follow the same approach in the 80s as it is now. So originally, when the SSPX started out, bishops would ask them to come in to a couple of dioceses because they thought that they had good priests. Then, of course, after they got canceled, that was no longer the case. But they are still operating under a system. Like they're waiting for Rome to give them approval to consecrate new bishops.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. We'll see what Filet does. I mean, they have the SSPX resistance that maybe they might help. Maybe there might be one bishop that might help. But I don't know who they would go to be honest. I don't know who they would go to. I mean, obviously we would be willing to help, but of course, they badmouth us and every other group. So it's like, who would want to after saying you can only go to the SSPX, and then they go outside the SSPX and say, hey, can you help us for consecrations? I mean,
and then we have the Sedevacantists groups who very similarly, they condemn other groups for doing things that sometimes they themselves do.
Yeah.
So Arian crisis, there was still a few bishops within the institution that were willing to stand up for orthodoxy and to be persecuted. Modernist crisis, the one bishop that maybe he was completely Novus Ordo, didn't speak any Latin, couldn't do a song mass because he didn't speak any Latin. So very odd beliefs, but sort of seems to be willing to stand up for others who believe that what he seems to believe to be the traditional faith. Oh, give us a key to the chancery. Okay, here you go. I'm just going to become a podcaster.
That's another thing too, is, I mean, I was thinking, whenever people see me being combative against other trads, it's not because of their position, so to speak. It's because they themselves have waged war condemning other trads. So like Nova's Order Watch constantly goes against the SSPX and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, they're trying to win more adherence to their position and to their chapels. To me, that's not what this is about. This is about, people getting to heaven. And so there's no way the RCI, the Roman Catholic Institute, Sanborn's group, or the CMRIs can be in absolutely every place all across the country. Like sometimes some people could only have access to an FSSP church or an SSPX church, or a Cedar Caer-Glow church or whatever else, and that's all they have available. So they go. So why are you going to make these people feel guilty? And is it about money? Is it really about money? So it's just a combativeness of attacking other trads. Like quit the what do you call this? The infighting, the shooting within a circle. I mean, it's kind of like just like with the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Daily Wire. That's what's happening in the conservative movement. Like everyone's just shooting each other. Everyone's just shooting each other. So for what's important in a crisis, there really is no perfect position. There is no perfect position. Sadists will disagree with me on it, and they'll shoot me for it. And you know what? Don't care. I've been kicked out of nicer places. So
Good evening, Mr. Mark Becker says good evening, everyone. And
about time, Mark. Where you been?
It's late. Maybe he thought, oh, Alberto's just gonna be super late again. Not today.
He was thinking Mexican time.
Amy wants to move to Florida in a heartbeat. Go to Our Lady of Good Hope. So, anyway, Mark Becker was working. Oh, very nice. That's fine. You're excused. You're excused. But yes, so the other topic, we have a couple of minutes left over here. Again, because unlike I say this every Friday, unlike the grifters, you have stuff to do, Father. So we can't just go on for 3 or 4 hours over here as much as we would like to. You have things to do. So the Archdiocese of Madrid in Spain puts out a document where they're talking about how clerical celibacy is outdated. And then in a parenthesis, they put including for future women priests. They are setting it up. And here's a problem. The problem is that the archbishops and the cardinals, they know Dr. Prevost. And why do they know him, Father? Because he's not just a random bishop from Peru. He was the superior general of the Augustinian order.
Mm-hmm.
He was time before he went to Peru. So if what the grifters want to make us think, Father, is that he was just a random bishop from Peru. It was just like there. Couldn't be so everybody knows him, especially people that have been around the institution for a long time. They know him. This whole thing of like, oh, he's just an unknown cardinal. Not true. That is not true.
It's the same with Cardinal Tobin. He was the superior general of the Redemptorists. If you're a superior general, people know you.
Traveling around the world, Europe.
Night, baby.
Night, baby. So they would not be even emboldened compared to the Bergoglian pontificate if they didn't know what's going on, if they didn't know the program. Just as when they did a shot of the loggia, Cardinal Suprich was smiling from ear to ear. You can go back and look at the footage immediately after Prevost came out of the loggia.
So here's the thing too. Okay, so whether or not someone believes in the holy orders being an ontological change, an altered reality, a sacrament requiring matter and form, intention. Whenever there's bishops that think that really women can be ordained, obviously they don't understand what a sacrament is that requires matter, form, and intention. And all these other bishops are in communion with these bishops. So this is actually a real issue. If someone doesn't understand what a sacrament is, they can't actually validly confect the sacrament. And so this bishop, this cardinal in Madrid, who thinks women can be priests, honestly, I would doubt the validity of every single priest that he ordains. I would doubt the validity of every single priest he ordains. Now the question is, like for instance, the Diocese of St. Petersburg here, if the bishop here is in communion with this bishop who believes in women's ordination, I mean, to be in communion means to be in the same faith. And so what are we supposed to consider their orders. Like, what's this bishop's intention? What does he believe about regarding the sacrament? Because obviously, if he's in communion, he believes the same thing. So this is a real issue, and of course, when you're questioning the whole definition of a sacrament, and you don't get called a heretic, and you don't lose your office, all that kind of stuff, they've really reduced the priesthood and the offices of bishop, priest, and deacon to just mere function, just a mere office. Nothing about any ontological change. Nothing sacramental about it. And so that's why they think women can be deacons and priests, is because all it is an office of jurisdiction, nothing of a sacramental reality. And the thing is, they've already denounced the sacramental reality. Whenever they get any priest that wants to leave the priesthood can just leave and get married. They don't care about their souls anymore. They don't care about the salvation of souls. When a priest leaves the priesthood and gets married, he'll be judged on his judgment day as a priest, not as really as a husband and father, but as a priest. And so not even Rome is really protecting the souls of those priests. So Rome really truly has lost the faith, which is all the more reason why we need to give credibility or acknowledge the credibility of those who actually continue to practice it, whether or not they have jurisdiction. Now, of course, people will emphasize jurisdiction over faith and whatever else because of money, because of influence, institutional credibility of a longstanding institution, whatever. But if they don't have the faith, there's no chance that they're saved.
So there we go. I was about to end the show, but we had one last minute question. Let's see. Chris Lopez, welcome back to the chat. Good to see you again. Question, Father, Bishop Barron wrote a book a while back and denied original sin. Would that make him excommunicated?
It would definitely make him a material heretic. But he would need to be approached by competent authority and said, hey, renounce this, change this. Because even St. Augustine wrote things that were wrong that he actually recounted. He actually wrote a whole treatise on the recounting of my errors, like taking back my errors, all that kind of stuff from his earlier days. So he obviously needs to be given the opportunity to recount his errors. But I mean, he continues to say, we have a reasonable hope all men are saved. So I doubt anybody's going to approach him on his errors. I doubt he would recount them. He'd probably use von Balthasar to kind of nuance his way into making it somewhat make sense or whatever. But not excommunicated, but I would not trust the guy. I would not read anything that he wrote. I would not watch his Catholicism series. I would just leave everything that he has to do to say just off to the side.
There we go. Thank you, Chris, for the question. 2 reminders before we end the show. Thank you so much for the nearly 120 logged into the show. We're streaming on X. We are streaming over on YouTube. Thank you so much for all the questions. That's what the Friday night live streams are about you setting up the topics, what you want us to talk about. Want to remind you about one thing. We are back on Tuesday on our series on the Story of a Soul by St. Teresa of Lisieux. We'll be back Tuesday night. And then, of course, our second reminder, Procedamus.com, the Procedamus 2026 Gala in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Go to Procedamus.com. Father, you mentioned, I believe, on Tuesday, people asking you about tables and stuff like that. So make sure that you acquire your tickets, because usually right before these events happen, that's when
tables
the
get
tickets
bought.
sell out. Tables get bought, and they just get bought out in chunks. So if you have been putting it off, do that no more. Go to Procedamus.com. Procedamus 2026 Gala in Clearwater Beach, Florida. That'll be Saturday. And then Sunday, we'll be going to Mass over at Our Lady of Good Hope. Old Roman Catholic Church. The Gala is in benefit of the Old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow and of the Oblates of St. Augustine. All information really in Procedamus.com, with Buck Hall as the Master of Ceremonies, Father Calvin Robinson as the keynote speaker. That'll be Procedamus.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Father, any parting thoughts?
That's it. See you Tuesday next week for Story of a Soul. God bless.